It's the way of making love. It's the way of placing my attention in reality. And then reality loves me and tenderly strokes my heart, right? And kisses my soul, right? And loves me open. And this dance, this erotic dance begins, right, between me and reality, this dance of amor. So that's our intention in Holy of Holies. That's our intention in One Mountain, which is Holy of Holies. Imagine, friends, imagine that we were 100 years from now, and someone left me a message, a dear close friend this morning, suggesting this image. And it was so true and correct. And the image was simple, but I want to add something to it. The image was, it's 20 years from now, or 30 years, or 40, or 50, or 60. And what we've been talking about here for the last 10 years, this meta crisis, which we've entered into deeply and diagnosed as a global intimacy disorder. Right? Imagine that sadly or tragically, all of the possibilities that we said might happen have happened. And we're actually on the verge of the last collapse. And we're right before a moment where we cross the Rubicon, either into some version of extinction, some dystopian scenario, some version of the death of humanity or the death of our humanity. And then we're offered this time machine, which allows us to go back and to be right here in 2023, right on April 30th or whatever day today is, and to act and to make a new set of decisions. What decisions would we make? And I want to invite, and this is the moment where we set intention. So I want to set intention, and then we're going to resonate the code, and then we're going to enter deeply into this next step in the revolution, this next step in understanding what it means to respond to the meta crisis and what it means to be alive and in full incarnation of Eros and delight, what it means to celebrate. We're going to enter into the world of story, the world of live your story, the world of story as a structure of cosmos, the world of reshape and revision your story, the world of choose your story, the world of own your story, the world of God loves stories, the world of edit your story. So it's an enormously important day, and this is a wildly critical and gorgeous new expression. We're going to be weaving together pieces from 20 years, but into a new sense and feeling. And by the end of today, my promise is, her promise, our promise to each other, that if we stay in full focus, we'll actually return to ourselves today, each of us, a piece of our story that's gotten lost. But the first step, and I want to just introduce this, and I want to introduce it as our intention setting today, is radical kavanah. And radical kavanah means full, potent, unimaginable focus. And focus means that we're actually sensitive and responsive to the invitation and the need of this moment. Sometimes for me, and if I can just be just personal for a second, one of the saddest things for me is I'll sometimes talk to a person who I feel like, wow, they're deep in. We're standing beside each other for a year, for 2 years, for 5 years. And then they'll say something and I realize why they don't get it. Right? Where they're actually looking at this meta crisis and our response and this telling of a new story of value in response to the meta crisis. It's kind of a hobby. It's a hobby we do. It gives us a sense of meaning. It entertains us somewhat, gives us a sense of belonging. But basically, this is not where our focus is. Our focus is on 1,000 other things, diffused to 1,000 other engagements. And some of them are important and holy and should be attended to. But ultimately, this is this little slice of what we do. And it fits into, it's a nice ornament. It's a nice piece of jewelry, right, in our lives. That's exactly not where we need to be. Right? That's what this exercise is. This exercise is, imagine we could come back to this time and we could actually choose and know that our choices can actually shift the very vector of history itself. And there's no question in my mind that they can. There's no question at all that the only thing that ever changes history, if you doubt that a small group of people can come together and change history, which is his story, her story, right? It's not true. The only thing that ever changes history is when a small group of people come together, they become a spiritual society. They become a band of outrageous lovers. They become an intimate communion with evolutionary longing and yearning, holding each other in mad love through the potency and through the poignancy and through the promise and through the pain. And together, we tell a new story of value that potentiates, that's potent and throbbing and tumescent and dripping and alive, that bursts the new world. It's only that radical focus, that radical placing of attention that allows us to tell the new story of value, to receive the whispers of she, to spread ourselves open, to spread our hearts and our embodiment and our souls open to receive the penetration of this moment, to receive the invitation of this moment. And then for us to so focus on the moment that we can enter it fully, we can penetrate it fully and throb it alive. So this is so deep, right? We live in this moment of attention hijacking, where attention is hijacked in 1,000 directions. We can't quite focus. There's too many options and too many possibilities and too much scrolling happening and too much. And we need to actually get quiet and go inside and feel like, who am I? Am I a private soul? And a private soul means my job is to take care of me and my family, which is beautiful. Everyone needs to take care of me and my family. Right? I spent a good deal of last night trying to figure out how to work out my son Zion's schedule and how I can pick him up this coming Friday, or maybe KK can pick him up and can Zach and I get him back in time in order to get right. No, so of course, our immediate circle of intimacy matters enormously. But if I'm really awake to who I am, and I realize I'm not just a private soul, what's called an neshama pratit, I'm an neshama kalit, I'm a public soul. And a public soul doesn't always mean to act in public, right? So my friend Zohar wrote me this weekend about a set of choices she's made, which are all private choices, but they were the choices of a public soul. And the choices were to study deeply and not to worry about degrees or diplomas or public structures of success, which is often not a public soul. That's just a private soul and win-lose metrics. But to really be a public soul, meaning to study and learn and be and embody what needs to be embodied at this moment of metacrisis, so I can actually participate in the evolution of the source code. And that takes 1,000 no's, my friends. It takes 1,000 no's in order to say the yes. So stay with me. It's so deep, right? It's like so deep. There's a text in the 3rd century on the inside of the inside, the deepest of the deep, by Avahu, the master Avahu. And Avahu says that before this world was manifested or created or evolved, however we tell that story, HaKadosh Baruch Hu bara olamot v'hichrivan. God, Goddess created worlds and then let them disappear and destroy them. So there's this image of infinity manifesting multiple worlds and then destroying them until infinity chooses this world. And it's so deep, right? It's so deep. And what the sacred text means is that there are worlds we need to let go of, allow them to crumble in order to choose the world in which we need to live our story. We need to respond to the story of humanity at this moment in time. We need to take our seat at the table of history and actually act, right, to tell the new story of value. And it's only a new story of value that actually evolves the source code, that actually changes the fate, the direction, the destiny of humanity. And it's why we say here every week, that we're at this time between worlds. We're at this time between stories. And it's got to be crystal clear and sharp, and it's so easy for it to get confused. It's got to be crystal clear. It's got to be completely sharp. We're at this time between stories, at this time between worlds, just like they were in the Renaissance when the old world order was breaking down and a pandemic swept through Europe. And every time I say these words, they're new to me. And I've said them 1,000 times. And we're at a moment like the Renaissance, but exponentially more critical. We're at the most critical moment that human history has actually ever known from the perspective of existence. And we can step in. Right? It's not 100 years from now. It's not 50 years from now. It's now. We can step in and we can tell this new story of value. We can be that spiritual society, that band of outrageous lovers, and we pour everything and we bring all the pieces together. We don't try and just touch bases, right? So many of us have to-do lists and we try and just cover everything in the to-do list and nothing gets done the way it should. Nothing, right? Nothing actually embraces the fullness of our energy where we sit on something and we sit inside and we perfect it. We make it perfect. We make it beautiful. Rather, we kind of move from activity to activity to activity, thinking if we get done as much as we can, right? No. 5 no's. Say 5 no's in order to say yes. And that's what divinity does. That's what that sacred text is, right? God says no to multiple worlds, to multiple universes in order to say yes to this possibility. The Big Bang is a yes. But in order to say that yes, does everyone hear this? It's so beautiful. In order to say that yes, infinity needed to say no. Infinity that has infinite power and infinite capacity and infinite versatility. A word that a dear beloved shared with me this week, a beautiful word, infinite versatility. We had to say no, not to everything, but to a lot in order to say yes. And the first thing we do is we say yes to each other, like, yes. Yes, yes, we're here together. We're in Unique Self Symphony together, right? We each need each other in some profound way. And at the center of the center, right? We have to be pillars for each other uniquely, right? And this is what God says to Goddess, right? This is what Shiva says to Shakti. This is what Earth says to Sky. This is what Krishna says to Radha. Right? I love you. Right? I need you. Right? Let's pour in and create this together. Let's pour in and just be so present because greatness is cumulative. So I want to just give you one more image. Have you all ever heard of something? And again, this may be new for people. I get this, but there's something that's called, sex. I don't know if anyone's familiar with this, right? Sex. And everyone heard of that? Anyone? Let's check the chat box. Anyone heard of that? Right? A few people have heard about it. Shout says not familiar. Okay. Right. Sex. What is sex? So what is sex? Stay with sex. What is sex? What is sex at the very core of things? What is sex? Not super sex, straight sex. What is sex? Sex is the placing of attention at its very core. Sex means I place my attention on you. And the joy of sexuality isn't just in the titillation, right? The particular pleasure sensation which comes. The joy of sexuality is, oh my God, we're completely placing our attention on each other. What sexuality is at the core is the placing of attention. And it's the placing of attention where you're not looking at your watch, right? You're not texting, right? Although people text and look at their watches today during sex all the time, but you're in full focus. You're doing what's called simat lev in Hebrew. The Hebrew word for the placing of attention is simat lev, the placing of my heart. Simat lev, attention means I've placed my heart on you. And I've placed my heart on you. And everything that flows from that is secondary. And sometimes it might be agony. And sometimes it might be bliss. And sometimes it might be tumultuous. And sometimes it might be spacious. But the joy, the reason we say that reality is Eros, is because Eros is the placing of attention. And the sexual models the erotic. We say it doesn't exhaust the erotic. The sexual models what it means to be an Eros. In order to love reality open at this moment in time, we need to actually make love to reality. And to make love to reality, and I come here from a kind of fierce tenderness, to make love to reality means, right? It means not to self-pleasure. It's different than self-pleasuring. All blessings to masturbation, right? But that's not what it is. It's making love. And making love means I'm completely placing my attention on the reality. I'm not, what do you need? That's what the lover does. The lover feels the need of the beloved. And the lover says to the beloved, your need is my allurement. Isn't that gorgeous? Your need is my allurement. I can feel the way you need to be touched. And I can feel the exact intensity and the exact firmness and the exact softness and the exact flutter and the exact pace, because we've completely placed our attention on each other. So in the lineage, we say Moses, that great figure of the Hebrew wisdom lineage, Moses is Ish Elohim. He's the man, he's the groom, he's the prince groom, he's the princess bride, right, of the divine, of the Shekhinah, of reality itself. So Moses is making love all the time. And then the Zohar says in the 13th century, It Moshe b'kol dara. Moses lives in each of us, in every generation. What does it mean? That's what it means to be in this band of outrageous lovers. It's to say, what does reality need from me in the very next moment? But not just my immediate circle, that's important, but it doesn't exhaust who I am if I'm in the band of outrageous lovers. So imagine it's 100 years from now, and I go back, and I've got this moment 100 years from now, 50 years from now, 20 years from now, when actually all the things we've been talking about have manifested, because we didn't actually do what we needed to do. And we don't know mystically what changes. We don't know in interior science what tips the balance, right? To be homo amor, to be the new human, to be the new humanity, is to actually have an experience that everything is in the balance. And my next decision tips everything over. So on the one hand, it's fully spacious. It's fully relaxed. On the one hand, we celebrate. On the one hand, we're in joy. We're not in the anxiety of what's the next moment. I don't mean this in an anxiety way. I mean it in a way of joy. It's the way of making love. It's the way of placing my attention on reality. And then reality loves me and tenderly strokes my heart, right? And kisses my soul, right? And loves me open. And this dance, this erotic dance begins, right, between me and reality, this dance of amor. So that's our intention in Holy of Holies. That's our intention in one mountain, which is Holy of Holies. That's our intention between each other. That's our intention as a band of outrageous lovers, right? Can everyone feel? Who can feel that? Who can feel that? It's a unique call. If you can feel it, just write us a yes. Who can feel that? Can you feel that, my friends? Who can feel that? And be brave. Can you be brave and write us a yes wherever you are? Right, wherever you are. You know, I'm looking. What else? Who else? Who else has a yes? Right? Any other yeses? Right? I'm just waiting for a couple of more yeses, a couple of more yeses. Yeah. Anybody else? Anybody else have a yes who can write? Right. Thank you for every single yes. Anybody else? Any other yeses? We just need a couple of more yeses, right? A couple of more people that you can just kind of step in, right? Step in. I'm actually going to write yes. We can feel each other. We can feel each other. We can feel the yes, right? No one's left out of the circle. Who else? Anyone else can feel the yes? Yeah, thank you. Thank you. A couple of more. Yeah, a couple of more. Yeah, a couple of more. Right. A couple more. Anybody else? Anybody else? I feel like it was just a couple more. Right? Can we just feel the yes? Anybody else can just feel that, and we come together and we feel each other. Right? Yes. 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 Right? Yes. Right? Yes. Right? Right? Oh my God, right? Yes. Feel that yes. Just feel that yes resonating in Unique Self Symphony. And David, brother David, give us the code.
Here it is. Every true intimate encounter is a unique self-encounter between soul stories. In a true unique self-encounter, we realize that we each are holding a piece of each other's story. The ethical demand of a unique self-encounter is that we return to each other the missing chapters of our stories. The motive force of evolution is unique self-encounters, in which we are constantly returning to each other the depth of our unique stories. The ultimate expression of reality is billions and billions of unique self-encounters, which generate a unique self-symphony of stories, all of which are rooted in a shared story of value as the ultimate context for our wild and sacred diversity. So here's this week's code one more time. Every true intimate encounter is a unique self-encounter between soul stories. In a true unique self-encounter, we realize that we each are holding a piece of each other's story. The ethical demand of unique self-encounter is that we return to each other the missing chapters of our stories. The motive force of evolution is unique self-encounters in which we are constantly returning to each other the depth of our stories. The ultimate expression of reality is billions of unique self-encounters which generate a unique self-symphony of stories, all of which are rooted in a shared story of value as the ultimate context for our wild and sacred diversity. Back to you, Mark.
So I want to do something with you this morning, and I want to share something which will bring us into our code. And I'm not going to get to do, I wrote lots of notes actually, about what I wanted to do today, but I want to do just a small piece of it because I want to share something with you, which is so important that it'll make the code make sense. And I'm going to read something to you. There's an article that just appeared in a magazine called Atlantic Magazine. And it's talking about, the title of the article is America's Intimacy Problem. And you would think, well, they've been at one mountain, right? They're actually listening. There's an intimacy problem. There's an intimacy problem. And it's a good intuition. It's a good start. When you actually read the article, you get the challenge, the tragedy, the invitation, and the demand of this moment. And of course, you can replace America for Europe or global. But what the article essentially asks is, why are people not intimate? And it talks about this, quote, it's painful to watch just how disconnected people are, writes Michael Hilgers, right, who's a well-known therapist on the American scene. And what the article basically says is that if we would use attachment styles, and attachment styles are a particular form of psychological understanding that began about 70 years ago. One of our board members at the center, Lori Galperin, is an expert at attachment theory. Her and her partner, Mark Schwartz, who have been at many of our conclaves. And they work very deeply in attachment theory. And attachment theory basically says that your attachment, meaning the love and trust, by attachment, they mean the love and trust, but attachment's a more neutral word, so that's why they use it, right? Your attachment with your early caretakers, your mother, your father, or your caretakers, the nature of that early attachment determines the vector, the trajectory of your life. Will your life break down? Will it collapse? Will it fall apart? Will you be addicted? Will you be tormented? Or will you be able to live a kind of stable life, which is productive and satisfying and contributory and filled with goodness, truth, and beauty? Well, they say this is dependent on your attachment, your early attachment, which really means, let's get underneath that. What attachment really means is, what's the love story? And I want you to see what we're doing. Or we're actually going underneath the words. What's the love story between you and your mother and father? Or between you and your early caretakers? What's the love story that you experience early in your life? And because the universe is a love story, that's its nature. And we've talked about that in many conversations here in One Mountain, right? We live in a cosmoerotic universe. We live in an intimate universe. And I'm not going to go down the path now of showing why that's true in terms of the exterior and interior sciences. But because we live in the universe, a love story, and your early caretakers incarnate the universe, they are the universe. So the way they hold you, the way they hold me, that's my first love story. So the way I experience my first love story is how I'm going to experience all of reality. That's what attachment theory says. It doesn't use these words. If it did, attachment theory would be far more effective. It uses, much more clinical words. That's really what it means, even if attachment theorists don't fully acknowledge it. And I've talked to Lori and to any number of the key attachment theorists in the world and shared this with them. And they all said, yeah, that's actually right. We never would have said it that way. And we can't write about it in journals that way. We're afraid to, but yes, that's what it's about in its deepest core. Now, stay close, friends. There are 4 styles of attachment, right? There's, what's called secure attachment. And secure attachment means you had a good attachment with the mother or father. In our language, it was actually a love story that worked, that you could feel at home in, that challenged you, that you were embraced in. That's secure attachment. Very few people have what's called secure attachment. Then there's what's called avoidant attachment. You desire attachment, but you avoid it. You actually insist on a certain kind of independence. You can't really listen, right? You can't really drop in. You can't fully surrender, right? Whether it's to your family context or really to anything, you just can't do that ultimate step of surrender and deep love attachment. And you avoid it through many things. You may avoid it by being really busy, never really committing fully and all the way in any one place. You may avoid it by asserting your autonomy and your independence in ways that actually you don't need to. You can assert your autonomy and be in communion, but you can't quite find communion. So you want attachment, but you avoid it. That's called avoidant attachment, right? The third form is called anxious attachment, right? You want it, but you have a fear of it, right? And you're very, very confused. It makes you very, very anxious. So you can't quite drop in. And then there's disorganized attachment, right? Where you both want it and don't want it at the same time. It's disorganized and you're kind of all over the map. Now, all 3 of that I just mentioned, avoidant attachment, anxious attachment, or disorganized attachment, are based on one fundamental breakdown, which is a breakdown in trust. So this article suggests that the world today is in a place of avoidant attachment or insecure attachment or anxious attachment. And that's exactly what we've called here the global intimacy disorder. But now stay really close. What the article is doing is diagnosing this collapse of trust based on exterior barometers, exterior ways of evaluating trust. And here's what the article now says. But the root causes of America's trust issues, and of course, this article is talking about America, right? But you can apply it any place. The root causes are impossible to diagnose, right? Maybe they're a reflection of America's worries about societal problems. Maybe it's, in Europe, the war. Maybe it's ChatGPT. Maybe it's financial insecurity, right? And when society feels scary, maybe that seeps into your relationships. Could be. Others say that it's the smartphones and certainly technology. The smartphones have contributed something to the decline in physical intimacy. But smartphones don't quite account for it. Maybe it's that during COVID, people were apart from each other for long periods of time, and so we weren't able to reclaim intimacy. Maybe. But in the end, what the core voice in the article says is, we can't determine, we don't know why people are putting up walls, growing further and further away from one another. We just know that it's happening. Right now, that's the tragedy of the article. So in the article, there's no real understanding of what intimacy is. There's just an understanding that intimacy breeds trust, but we're not sure how to breed trust, and we're not sure why it's falling apart, and we're not sure why there's this collapse of trust, which is this collapse of intimacy. But here's the thing. You can't be intimate with someone. You can't create intimacy unless you're living in a shared story. And that's the core. You cannot even begin to address this global intimacy disorder unless we're actually living in a shared story of value. To the precise extent that a couple experiences themselves as being in a shared story, the couple creates intimacy. And you can create intimacy at a role mate level, as we talked about last week. We have shared roles, but we're in a shared story. You can create it at a soulmate level. We're sharing the story of our vulnerability and our brokenness, our holy and broken hallelujah. You can create it even more deeply at a whole mate level, intimacy, because we're sharing the larger story together. But intimacy means the depth of our shared story. And the more we link our shared story, the more we link our destiny by experiencing each other as being in a shared story of value, in which my story affects your story and your story affects my story. We're not in a win-lose metrics. We're not each on our own hero's journey. We're not each involved in our own spiritual path, although that's also true. We're each unique selves with unique vocations and unique callings, but our unique selves are unique chapters of a shared story. It's only the experience of a shared story that can actually address the intimacy disorder. And that shared story has to be a shared story of value, where we actually experience reality as being a story of value, in which value is real, right? Value is rooted in first principles and first values, which are intrinsic structures of cosmos. In other words, you can't have intimacy unless we're in the field of value together. And to be in the field of value together means that we have a shared story. That's what a shared story means. A shared story, and this is our first week on story. A shared story means we're in the story of value together. Does that make sense, everyone? So we began like 10 weeks ago, and we talked about outrageous love and ordinary love. And we said we live in a world of outrageous pain. The only response is outrageous love. That was step one. Two is we said that outrageous love is not ordinary love. It's not just a social construct. Outrageous love is the heart of existence itself. 3, we said, that outrageous love lives personally, irreducibly, uniquely in each one of us. Each of us are unique, outrageous lovers. 4, we said, so therefore, what's there to do? To commit outrageous acts of love. 5, we said, which outrageous acts of love? Those that are a function of your unique self. 6, we said, how do you arouse that experience of outrageous love? You can't, it's almost impossible to hold. You arouse that experience by writing outrageous love letters, by writing outrageous love notes. By writing outrageous love notes, you enter into the field of outrageous love and you arouse the actual first person experience. And you realize, who am I? I'm an outrageous lover writing outrageous love letters. And then you go deeper, number 7, you realize, who am I? I actually am an outrageous love letter. Right? My unique self is God's, goddess's outrageous love letter to me. And my outrageous acts of love are my outrageous love letter back to the infinity of intimacy, back to reality, back to the divine, back to the globe that desperately needs my outrageous acts of love. Now, 8, that's today. And what that means is that I begin to conceive my life as an outrageous love story. That my life is not ordinary. My life is extraordinary because my life is an outrageous love story. It's a unique love story, which is chapter and verse in the universal love story. And the plot line of my life is my outrageous love story. And it includes my romantic loves, and it includes my outrageous loves, and it includes my outrageous acts of love, and it includes my outrageous love letters and my outrageous erotic love letters. And it includes the unique configuration of intimacy and eros that is my life. Right? My life is an outrageous love story, and it participates in the outrageous love story of reality. Now stay close. So there's this article on intimacy in a major Western magazine that we began talking about. And they don't know what intimacy is, right? So they can only identify it by its lack. There's a collapse of intimacy. And they say the collapse of intimacy is identifiable because there's a lack of trust. And then they say, we don't know why. We can only tell you that it's there, but there's no way to understand why. And so they offer all sorts of possibilities. Maybe it's the global crisis, or we're afraid to love each other, right? They don't quite say it that way, but the scariness gets in the way of intimacy, maybe. Maybe it's smartphones, maybe. Maybe it's the pandemic, maybe. But no, all of those are symptoms. Those are all important, but those are symptoms. What's the root cause of the global intimacy disorder? Does everyone begin to get why this new story of value we're telling matters? Because if you can't diagnose, you can't heal. And in telling the new story of value is first a diagnostic, right? You've got to diagnose, you got to accurately see the breakdown. And from that accurate seeing of the breakdown comes the breakthrough. You need to understand the nature of the emergency. And from the nature of the emergency comes the new emergence. That's what it means. Our crisis is a birth. Our crisis is a birth. Crisis is an evolutionary driver is only true when I understand that every crisis is a crisis of intimacy. But I understand, okay, what is intimacy? Intimacy means we live in a shared story, but not an ordinary shared story, an outrageous love story. And an outrageous love story is a story of value in which we live in a shared story of intrinsic value, and we experience ourselves in the field of value together. We're in the field of value together. We feel each other in the field of value. And then we begin to resonate with each other. In our own unique circles of intimacy and influence, we resonate with each other. We become intimate with each other. So I want, in the light of that, to read the code now, right? Every time, every true intimate encounter is a unique self-encounter between soul stories, right? And in a true unique self-encounter, we realize that we're each holding a piece of each other's story. When God meets Goddess, when Krishna meets Radha, when the Shekhinah meets Tiferet, when the upper waters meet the lower waters, when earth meets sky, right? When line meets circle, when that really happens, we understand, oh my God, I love you. I need you. I need you desperately. I love you desperately. And my desperation is ecstatic and it's filled with joy. We actually understand we're holding a piece of each other's story. And the most pressing ethical demand of our life, which is the ethical demand of a unique self encounter, is that we return to each other the missing pieces of our stories, right? We're each holding a piece of each other's story. And to be in an outrageous love story is to know that I have outrageous lovers who are my beloveds, and that those outrageous lovers who are in my unique circle of intimacy and influence, reality has placed them close to me. Reality has worked hard to bring us together. It's because we have a piece of each other's story. And the motive force of evolution, right, is unique self-encounters in which we return to each other the missing piece, right, of our story. Wow. Can you feel that? Can you feel the resonance in that? That's intimacy. Intimacy means we have shared identity in the sense that we're part of a shared story of value. One, we're unique expressions. We each have unique stories. We each have unique self stories in that unique self symphony. But our stories resonate with each other. They resonate with each other. They evoke something. And we realize my story is not just my story. I'm not just living my spiritual path or my hero's journey, but actually in my story, there's a piece of your story. And there's something that happens when we're together that allows me to return to you a piece of your story and allows you to return to me a piece of my story. That's intimacy, right? And that's what trust means. Trust means is I'm going to return to you by being radically present and radically on the inside with you and promising you I'll be here forever. And I want to just get this, right? Right? We've got to be here forever for each other. That's what evolutionary family means, right? The nature of biological family is we know we're forever. But we think evolutionary families, it's a little moment, a little episode we had in our lives. No, evolutionary family has to be forever. And in every intimate encounter that's real is forever. You know, one of the principles that I try and teach in sexuality is that there should never be sexuality between two people who are not going to love each other forever. Now, that love may express in many different forms, but you have to love each other forever. And not just sexual intimacy, the sexual model is the erotic. In a true intimate encounter, when we have a piece of each other's story, we look in each other's eyes and we say, it's forever. I'm going to be returning your story to you every single day. I'm going to be never not returning your story to you. Right? It's so deep. It's so deep. That's a unique self symphony. Right? That is the beginning of the healing of a global intimacy disorder. One, we live in a shared story of value. Two, we're each unique expressions. We're each unique expressions of that shared story of value. Three, that shared story of value means that in our unique stories, we have not only our own story, but a piece of our beloved story. I'm holding a piece of Terry's story and Terry's holding a piece of my story. Can you feel that? It's huge. I'm holding Medea, I'm holding a piece of your story and you're somehow holding a piece of my story. And by being in each other's presence, we evoke something in each other that no one else can evoke. And by talking to each other, being in each other's presence, right? Sharing in the space. And there's many different levels. Sometimes we evoke that just by being in each other's presence. Other times we do it by deep study, right? Other times we do it by creating together. But we're radically focused. We've placed our attention on each other. We're making love in every second and we're making love forever. And a spiritual society, a band of outrageous lovers, means we've stepped in, we're going to place our attention, and we're not going to look away. Sometimes we have to come closer. Sometimes we need to step back in order to attend to other things that need attending, but then we step back in, but we never look away. And we actually realize oh my God, here we are in 2023. We've actually been placed in this moment. We've done that exercise that my friend suggested to me, right? Where we come back to this moment in time from 100 years from now, and we can actually make choices. We can make choices to love each other more madly than ever before. We can make choices to focus than to say 1,000 no's in order to scream the yes, right, of the ultimate explosion, right, into union and into rapture. But to scream that yes, there's 1,000 no's. And there's a steadiness. There's a placing of attention. There's a placing of the heart, right? Wow. No. So I want to just feel for a second, okay? I want to feel for a second. And I want to invite, if I can, with permission, I want to invite you to an exercise. The exercise has 2 steps. And it's a beautiful, stunning exercise. And those of us who are collecting exercise, let's collect this one. First, are we willing to love each other desperately? Right? And to love desperately, you can only do when you realize that in every I love you is I need you. Am I willing to love you desperately and to need you desperately? Right? That's 1. 2, am I willing to realize that I have a piece of your story that's mine to return to you? We're going to come back to this. We're going to do one mountain on this. We're going to go deep into what this means. But let's just stay there for today. To actually know I need you, right? I need you. I can't do it without you. You think I can. You think it's just technical and functional. And you think, I can keep showing up. But I can't. I can't. There's something that you pour into me. Something that I pour into you that no one that ever was, is, or will be can pour in. Like, wow. Right? It's like, wow. Right? She places us next to each other. She says, love each other madly. Be a band of outrageous lovers. And know that each of you has a piece of each other's story without which you can't be whole. Without which you can't be an outrageous lover. Without which we can't be in an outrageous love story together. Without which we can't participate in evolving the source code of culture and consciousness in telling this new story of value in response to this meta crisis, in response to this breakdown. It's so real, my friends. It's so real. It's so beautiful. And so we have to speak of each other's love in the morning and trust each other through the night and trust that we're always there for each other, right? Can you feel that? To speak of your love in the morning and to trust you through the night. That's what Solomon said. And it goes like this, and I want to just chant it for you for a second. Then Krista will take us in and invite us to step in for real. Together, again and again and again. And friends, if I was too fierce today, I'm only talking to myself. I'm just talking out loud to myself. I'm just inviting myself. And thank you for listening in. And if you feel that it speaks to you, then in any small way, then I'm madly honored. We're at a crossroads, my friend. Right? It's ours to do. It's ours to do. Here I place my love for you. So here's this little chant, okay? It goes like this. Mizmor shir leyom Shabbat tov lehodot l'Adonai, to sing a song of the Sabbath. It's good to sing with thee because I need you and love you desperately. Mizmor shir leyom Shabbat, so good to be with thee. I love you so desperately. Mizmor shir leyom Shabbat, it's good to sing with thee, to speak of your love in the morning and to trust you through the night, to speak of your love in the morning, and she trusts us through the night. Ciao. Yay. Love you madly and desperately.